everyone, and welcome to SUNUP. I'm Lyndall Stout. We're enjoying a little stroll through the Agtropolis exhibit. It's always one of our favorites each year at the Oklahoma State Fair. The hands-on exhibit lets people get up close and personal with farming and agriculture. We caught up with Lindsay Irick from Seminole FFA, who is volunteering.
Not a lot of kids have seen an actual cow. They've seen them in like fields, but they've never gotten really all that close. Being able to see the animals, they don't really get to see them. Like the chicks, it's just, they're cute and they're fluffy and they just hatched out of an egg. Like I watched one hatch out yesterday and it was pretty cool.
We'll have more from the State Fair a little later in the show. But first, we're talking weed management in winter crops. Here's our extension weed scientist, Misha Manucheri.
The best competitive edge we can give our crop early in the season, the less headache we'll have down the road. So maybe if we have enough time, going out with some kind of burn down herbicide application, maybe some kind of physical, mechanical implement. And if we are going down with something chemical, it's important that we're cautious about some of our plant back intervals and timings, making sure that we're not going to injure that crop when we do go ahead and plant. So if we need a herbicide recommendation, if we're not sure what to spray, or if we should spray at all, then finding out what you have, taking a picture, sending it in to your extension educator, or someone that can help you out, we're more than happy to do that. Our weeds, unfortunately, are very adaptive, and we typically see our most problem weeds mimic our crop. So our grassy weeds are going to be a problem in our grassy crops, and our broadleaf weeds are a problem in our broadleaf crops, which is why we have been trying to introduce some other crops to kind of trick our grassy weeds that come up in wheat. So not only does that help with adaptation cycles, but it also allows us to use new herbicide chemistries. So if we have a grass problem and we've been continuous wheat, maybe it's time to think about rotating, tricking those weeds, and perhaps using some new herbicides. I know more growers are going out with pre-emergence herbicides for Italian ryegrass, and some of the timings for those products are very specific. Two products, Zidua, Anthem Flex, we put those down delayed pre-emergence or early post-emergence, which delayed pre-emergence can be something new to some growers. Usually we're putting those down when we have germination up to spiking. Another thing with pre's that we need to keep in mind is that soil type, organic matter, pH, all of that's going to affect our rate range. So we need to look at the label, and if we have any questions, get in touch with an industry partner or someone on the extension side. One of the bigger contributors to not having quality wheat, and protein is included in that, is what we take to the mill post-harvest. When we can't control a weed and that weed goes to seed, I'm primarily talking about our winter annual grasses that behave like wheat. We're going to haul those weed seeds to the mill, and we're going to be docked for that. So we have two main sources that we're going to lose some income at the mill. That's dockage, what we can clean out of our wheat samples, and foreign material is what we cannot clean out. So what we cannot clean out is especially important because that's going to be used in our end product, and that's going to affect our ultimate wheat quality.
This week, folks have been talking about the rain and the heat. Wednesday afternoon showed why this has been such a hot week. High dew point temperatures. Out in the Panhandle were fall-like dew point temperatures in the 40s. In most of Oklahoma Wednesday afternoon, dew point temperatures were in the low 70s. Those high dew point temperatures made for hot days and warm nights. We need drier air to cool down at night. Afternoon highs on Wednesday were in the 70s in Cimarron County, in the 80s in the rest of the Panhandle, and in the 90s for most of the state. Morning lows on Wednesday were in the 40s in Cimarron County, in the 50s for the rest of the Panhandle, and in the 70s for much of Oklahoma. Eufaula and Tallahena had morning lows of 77 degrees. That's really warm for late September. The average nighttime low for Tallahena for September 20th is 60 degrees. The average low for Eufaula is 62 degrees. Our rainfall on Sunday and Monday provided some good amounts of rain in the green areas in southwest, central, and northeastern Oklahoma. The southeast had no rain. To the west and in the Panhandle, rain amounts were low. Here's Gary with a look at our last rain's impact on our drought situation.
Thanks, Alan. Good morning, everyone. Well, despite the rain that Al talked about, we still have dry conditions in Oklahoma. Let's go right to the drought monitor map and see what we have. So basically the same picture as last week with just a little bit more of that abnormally dry in the far southeast. That's the yellow. That's a precursor to drought. We still have that moderate drought, the brown color, up in Harper County and far northeastern Beaver County. So despite the rains, as I said, still some dry conditions with the impacts. We can show that on the departure from normal rainfall map for the last 30 days from the Oklahoma Mesonet. Still some pretty good deficits, and those are generally starting to spread more into northeastern Oklahoma, but they still exist up in northwestern Oklahoma and in the far southeast. Now hopefully some help is on the way. If we take a look at the Climate Prediction Center's medium-term outlooks for temperature and precipitation for early next week, we do see in the blue for temperature increased odds of below normal temperatures, and that is associated with, as we look at the rainfall map, increased odds of above normal precipitation. So cooler than normal, wetter than normal, especially in the southwestern half of the state. Unfortunately, that's not where we need the rain the most, but hopefully the rest of the state will get a little bit here and there and help alleviate those dry conditions and change the colors on that drought monitor map. And as always, that can change as we get closer. Hopefully we're going into more of a wet fall pattern. Kick that drought on out of here before it gets started. That's it for this time. We'll see you next time on the Mesonet Weather Report.
Over the past 10 years or so, we've noticed that the world market has changed when it comes to wheat. Kim, what's different?
Well, I think the big difference is production. You look at the world production, it's increased 4.9 billion bushels. You know, we're producing a near record 27.3 billion this year. The biggest increase is the former Soviet Union countries, Russia, Ukraine. Their production has increased 1.4 billion bushels, or 46%. China, we've seen a 1.1 billion bushel increase. India, 788 million. The EU, 28 countries, 865 million bushels. If you look at just about every major wheat producing country, they've all increased production except for the United States and Argentina, and we've seen small decreases in those countries.
Is it related to production or actually yield?
You can look at yields, and I think that's the biggest impact. You look at the world, you've had a 20% increase in yields from 42 to 50 on an average. The United States has went from 42 bushels per acre to 47, a 12% increase. Oklahoma has went from 33 bushel per acre average down to 28, and if you throw out 2014, that disastrous year, your average is still 30, or a 15% decline if you include 14, a minus 9% if you don't include 14. If you look at harvested acres, the world's increased harvested acres by 3%. The United States has lowered harvested acres by 6%, and Oklahoma by 18%. So if you look at it, you know, it's the increases in yield has given us our increases in production.
So really, what's the determining factor in there? What's different?
I think the countries, you know, the former Soviet Union, the Eastern European countries, I think they're using new technology, and I think improved management production practices. And I think those changes are here to stay.
Let's talk exports. What countries are actually exporting wheat?
Well, if you look at that same 10-year period, we had a 53% increase in world exports. That big increase coming from the former Soviet Union countries for the most part. You have increased with European Union countries. You've had increases in Australia. You've had increases from Canada. Again, the declines in exports has been the United States and Argentina. So the export market has been taken over mostly by former Soviet Union and European markets.
Is there any good news in this crystal ball of yours?
Oh yeah, if you look at some good news, I think it's short term. I think all the bad news is in the market. I think the market's already taken that in consideration. If you look at the northern hemisphere harvest is essentially done. Argentina's got wet problems and their yields and quality is probably going down. Australia's got drought problems. They're maybe 33% lower than last year. I think prices are at the bottom and maybe some hope for higher prices here in the short run.
And you always say policy comes and goes, but it's weather that makes the price.
Weather determines the market.
There we go. Kim Anderson, grain marketing specialist here at Oklahoma State University. Also, personal information may have been compromised during a recent cybersecurity hack. And Oklahoma State University's Damona Doy has information to keep your personal information personal.
The recent hack of Equifax has put in jeopardy the identity of millions of consumers in the United States. You can go to the Equifax website, enter your information to find out if you're one of those people who may be in jeopardy. If you are, you will likely want to freeze your credit accounts. And so it's recommended that you freeze your credit reports on Experian, as well as Equifax and TransUnion, and perhaps Innovis as well. It's a bit smaller, but also important. By freezing your credit, you're protecting the ability of, or preventing others from accessing your account information, using your account information to establish new loans. So it costs $10 for some freezes if you're not a victim of identity theft in Oklahoma, but that's a small price to pay for some additional security. In addition, you'll want to monitor your annual credit reports throughout the year. You're allowed one free report from each of the 3 big agencies over the course of the year, and so a good idea is to stagger them, to look at them at different times to see that there's no fraudulent activity occurring on your accounts.
A romance with the Old West reignited recently when a group of cowboys and cowgirls took the slow road from Pond Creek, Oklahoma to Wichita, Kansas. SUNUP's Ed Barron and Dave Deacon caught up with them in Grant County.
I'm on a wagon train taking these cattle to Kansas for a starter.
We reenacting this thing because it was great way back when. A lot of people don't get to do this. You know, I mean, it's history. Think about it, man. I wish I'd lived back in them days.
What your imagination can't conceive, your eyes are just bringing it all back into how history was, and it was incredible.
We get up at around 4 o'clock. We had breakfast ready to eat this morning at 6 o'clock, and I don't know what time we'll feed them this evening.
Today we went from the Sewell Stockade, which was a famous trading post on the Chisholm Trail, and then we'll be heading north to Medford for a big celebration parade, and then we'll be camping out a mile and a half east on Highway 11.
Hey, we need to cull this steer right here. Been a real deal too. We got Johnson grass over there 8 foot high. I think we left a couple over, but we're gonna, after we get off, we're gonna go over and see if we can flush them out. Hey cattle, hey!
Well, they brought thousands of head of cattle up the Chisholm Trail. And that time in our history is a glamorous time for a lot of people. They want to be cowboys. Here it is 150 years later, we get to still live that dream that most people have, and it's very rewarding. When this is over, we'll have something to tell our kids about and stuff about traveling the Chisholm Trail when it was 150 years old.
the Chisholm Trail would eventually become Highway 81. And for a few weeks here in September, cowboys and many Longhorns are recreating the trip that Jesse Chisholm made 150 years ago.
One of the first lifeblood trails that took cattle out of a starved Texas to people that were desiring meat on the East Coast, and it holds countless stories of heroism, of the epic trail, of the cattle drives, of the cowboy, what we all became today.
I feel like it was one of the major trails, and it's part of history. I like to be part of it. You get to see a lot of country. Going along in a wagon is a good way to see America. You go slow, you got time to look at the countryside, the fences, the grasses, the people, the towns. You meet a lot of real nice people.
It's relaxing. You know, the world today, you know, it's zip, zip, buzz, buzz, you know, and you can do something like this on a half-broke horse. That's living. You get a horse back, you're halfway to heaven.
It holds countless stories of heroism, of the epic trail, of the cattle drives, of the cowboy, what we all became today.
The roughly 800-mile trail Jesse Chisholm pioneered 150 years ago took up to 2 months to complete, from southern Texas to the railheads in Abilene, Kansas. These riders will finish their 90-mile trek over prairie, crop, asphalt, and county road in about 10 days.
You get to ride with these people? My land, that's worth a lot.
But their romance for a foregone way of life is burning hotter than ever.
My name's John Wayne.
From a Grant County road, somewhere between Jefferson and Medford, I'm Dave Deacon.
As we enter the fall of the year, it's a time, of course, when spring calving herds are going to be weaning the calves and deciding which cows we need to cull out of the herd. One of the traits that I would really seriously consider is temperament. Now, we'd all like to get rid of those really crazy cattle in our herd that cause us a lot of problems when we're working with those calves. But now we've got another reason to consider temperament while we're selecting which cows to cull or which heifer calves to keep back as replacements, and that's profitability. You see, research done at Mississippi State University, published about 11 years ago, took a real look at temperament of cattle and how it affects long-term profitability. They took calves from 19 different herds in one of their feed-out projects, and they scored each calf on a scale of 1 to 5 on temperament. And they did that in basically 3 different ways. As the calves were in a pen together, as a technician would walk into the pen, they would score each individual calf based on how he acted as a pen score. Then they also gave him a score as he went into the working chute, and that was their chute score at 1 through 5. And the third method they used was what they call exit velocity. How rapidly did that calf jump out of the working chute after whatever process was being done was over? And then they combined those into a single score for each calf. As they followed those calves past weaning into the feedlot, what they found was that those calves with those higher temperament scores, those that were really excitable, aggressive calves, had lower profitability as they went through the feedlot phase, to the tune of $40 a head, which is pretty sizable. And you will remember those numbers again are 11, 12 years old, so it may even be bigger today. As we're thinking about which cows we're culling this fall, which heifers we're going to keep back as replacements, let's remember that important part about temperament affecting not only our ability to handle the cattle, but profitability as well. Also, we know from research that temperament is heritable. The estimates are that someplace between 36 and 45% of the differences in temperament of cattle is due to genetics. And that means that we can make real progress in our herds by culling those wild ones, saving back the more docile cattle, and over time making our whole herd easier to work with, and therefore in the long run should be just a bit more profitable. We hope you keep this in mind as you cull cows and select heifers this fall and winter. And we look forward to visiting with you again next week on SUNUP's Cow-Calf Corner.
Daryl Peel, our livestock marketing specialist, joins us now. And Daryl, cow-calf and stocker producers are watching the cattle markets this time of year. What can they expect to see this season?
Well, if you look at the long-term seasonal pattern, cattle, calf and stocker prices tend to decline from August through September to an October low. That's the long-term average, but Oklahoma is a unique place because, especially in September, we've got stocker demand starting to come on. We're a little bit ahead of the fall run of calves, so sometimes when we have pretty good forage conditions, as we do this year, we'll actually see these prices hold steady or even go up, and that's what we've seen actually so far in September. The stocker prices have strengthened a little bit, so probably as we get into October, that seasonal pressure will come to bear. We may hold these prices closer to steady, but my guess is they will drop eventually, but they're actually right now strengthening just a bit.
So if it does drop, what does that mean for the rest of the year?
Well, the stocker producers are trying to figure out when to buy. Again, right now they may be a little bit ahead of the market, so, time might be on their side here to get a decent buying opportunity. They may not drop all that much this year. It's hard to say, but we do know there's a bigger calf run coming in the fall. Cow-calf producers, of course, are looking to sell at the best possible prices. Most of them are not ready to wean yet, so it's a little bit early. The October low is probably going to be the low, and so they may be looking at whether or not they want to retain those calves for a little bit after weaning. We typically see some recovery in November and December after that October low.
So what can cow-calf producers and stocker producers take with all this information going forward?
Well, again, every year's a little bit unique in Oklahoma. I guess we're kind of watching this market for the next 2 or 3 weeks to see if we kind of get back to a little bit more of a seasonal move. And again, we've got more opportunities in general this year. Oklahoma is still surprisingly green for this time of the year. We're trying to get wheat planted. Some of it's planted and up around the state, other cases not yet. So there's just a lot of things going on. Producers can, sort of plan out their activities. I think they've got more flexibility this year to consider some different alternatives.
All right, thanks, Daryl. Daryl Peel, livestock marketing specialist at Oklahoma State University.
Finally today, a quick stop in the Creative Arts Building for a look at what it takes to crown a winner at the state fair level.
We've brought 45 counties in. The entries qualified at their county fair. They had to win first place at their county fair to be here. We have 4,100 exhibits that are entered in the fair today. We have 56 judges, and then we have all the educators from those counties that are being judged right now.
Yeah, you will. You set them across.
There's a lot of stuff that people don't see before they get to the state fair. This starts about in January of last year. We started meeting with the state fair. You have to order the draperies. You have to order the proper number of tables. You have to get the judges ordered. You have to get judges.
Notice how the color is better because it looks like they dried them and pressed them better. 27 junior self-determined. And in this class, the exhibitor is able to basically create their own project idea. Because this is a wildflower class, we're going to have obviously things that relate to Oklahoma wildflowers and wildlife. The things that we look for obviously is readability. Sometimes young people are tempted to put too much information on a poster and it becomes difficult to read. I like to see something that is attractive, has good eye appeal, and yet communicates a story. This is kind of an oxymoron. Wildflowers in my yard. If I have wildflowers in my yard, I usually call them weeds. Now, some people like wildflowers in their yard. I actually have a lot of different kinds of milkweed in my yard for the butterflies, the monarchs. Here is a poster that communicates the development or the bloom process for this particular wildflower, the Indian blanket. And at first it's obviously a very visually appealing, but it's a little difficult to communicate or to pick up on what is the idea.
You get to do this forever. No, we're not.
You know, I think you go back to what 4-H was built on. 4-H was built on positive youth development. And so we give these kids an opportunity to experience developing their self-confidence through learning a project and showing that what they've learned through the project. They get to do the exhibit. So it's more than just doing an exhibit. It's actually getting to show what they've learned through the exhibit.
Well, it looks like it could be something cool.
So for me personally, this is a great opportunity to come and to see what young people are doing, and simply an opportunity to encourage and support them. It's an opportunity for them to continue to learn new things and to explore things that they're probably not going to learn outside of the 4-H program.
Thank you.
That'll do it for us this week. Remember, you can find us anytime on our website, sunup.okstate.edu, and also follow us on YouTube and social media. From the Great State Fair of Oklahoma, I'm Lyndall Stout. Remember, Oklahoma Ag starts at sunup.
Thank you.